Welcome back, everybody. I can almost memorize what MD says. It's just me today, but welcome back to the arena. You have just myself, Matt. Our co host MD had something come up, and so it's just going to be me today and our wonderful guest. And so, what MD always does is thank our followers. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for listening and for your support. Secondly, I'm going to introduce our guest today, who is Natalie Bell. Natalie is she does a bunch of hats. I would say entrepreneur, but a social media influencer. She's a coach. I believe she's still a nurse. I'll let her time in there. And then also founder of the Cleveland Social, which I think is super cool, whereby she hosts events that connect single peeps in Cleveland where she lives. So, without further ado, Natalie, first of all, thank you for coming on, for giving us your time. Really appreciate it. Second of all, why don't you just provide an overview, one, if I got that right or wrong, but two, just who is Natalie Bell and kind of share how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I always feel so honored to be on these podcasts and be a guest and just to have a conversation about whatever it is that we're going to be talking about today. But yeah, I live in Cleveland. We were just talking about age before we jumped on. I'm 31. I do wear a lot of hats. I am a nurse still, and then I do life coaching, and then create content for social media. And then I did start Cleveland Social last year for connecting singles in real life in the Cleveland area.
Yeah, like what is your most what draws you most? Like you do all these different things, but like where's your heart drawn to? Is it a combination of the three at different times? Like what really gives you that sense of fulfillment?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of things, a combination of kind of everything I'm cultivating here. Nursing, is very fulfilling in the way that I get to help people during a time in their life when, physically they're not feeling the best, which also leads to, mental health issues and things like that. And then, the coaching kind of focuses more on the wellness side instead of the illness side. So get to really help people through, again, times in their life when they're struggling. And then, Cleveland Social is kind of a fun hat that I get to wear, just connecting people and getting out and about and creating these different events. So yeah, it's all been super fulfilling. I'm very interested in just connections and learning about people and giving back to people. I feel like that's what fills my cup up. So all three of these hats that I wear allow me to do that. So it's been great.
Yeah, and I should say I was grabbing coffee, catching up with a friend earlier, and I was telling her I was going on, had a podcast, and I told her who it was, and I noticed that I was looking at your profile, and I had a few mutual followers, and one of them was this person I was out with, and so I said, oh, like so just know, and she was like, oh yeah, I follow her, I really like her content, I just followed her, she's super relatable, and so just know you are impacting people across the country, whether you know it or not. I mean, super, super cool. I could not make this up, but it just came to my head. And so you mentioned that you just like really like connections and the idea of connecting with people. Like, just elaborate on where does that come from? Has that always been a thing of yours? Did that develop as you became more connected to yourself? Like, just talk through that experience.
Yeah, I think I just am a people person. I'm super personable. Am I like to think I'm very friendly. I love being around people. I love making people laugh, making people smile, connecting with them over, not only the good parts in their life, like stuff that's going really well, but also things that aren't maybe they're struggling through or they need some support with. And I've just always been drawn to people's vulnerability and just sharing the hard stuff. So it's something that I feel like is just ingrained in me, but something that I've kind of really cultivated through the years and kind of brought to the forefront of my personality. So, and just having like different avenues to let that shine, it's been really, really fun.
Yeah, and have you always been, you mentioned the word vulnerable. Like, have you always been vulnerable? Has this something you've had to like, I don't know. For me, I think about I used to be extremely insecure, extremely, mask on, like did not want anyone to really see who I was. And through my process of healing and self-discovery, this, what most people now would think is vulnerable, doesn't really feel like vulnerable to me. It takes a while. It takes a lot to get me to a place of vulnerability. I guess long-winded way of saying, or where I feel vulnerable. I guess a long-winded way of saying, what is that process of like opening up, of being honest with yourself, and then opening up to social media and being honest with others? Like, how has that process evolved?
I think for me, it started after a big breakup that I started to share more on social media, and it wasn't always easy to be vulnerable, but I think it was a way that I was able to really step into my healing, and it was almost like a spoken journal for me when I started to share. I don't journal physically. I like to think of my journal as like my Instagram, of being like, things that I'm going through or things that I'm learning. I'm talking about it instead of writing it down. So it just was a way for me to get my thoughts out. And once I started connecting with people over what I was sharing, it just became like almost an addictive feeling of, it's not only helping me, but it's helping other people too. So it's kind of like a win-win. But yeah, I feel like vulnerability, once you start, it becomes to feel more natural. So it's just getting over the hump of what will other people think, or how will I be judged, and just doing what feels best.
Yeah, and you say that from like we kind of gloss over that. That for you and I, it might be easy to look past that, and I still struggle with that. But the flip side of being vulnerable, especially on social media, I love the idea of like a spoken journal. But the flip side is you're also exposing yourself to, I mean, potential hurt, people, hateful comments. Like, how do you deal? I'm sure you get them. I can't imagine you haven't. So how do you deal with them? How do you kind of not place attention towards them or give them any value? Like, just talk through that, because there is like, while there's a huge benefit, and I'm sure you're able to connect with people that can relate to what you're saying and are in the similar situations. That's the good. The tough side of vulnerability is kind of what I'm getting at here, and just curious of your experience.
I think you have to really get clear on what your intention is behind what you're sharing. I'm never sharing from a place of like, oh, I want attention, or oh, I want validation. It's coming from a place of genuinely wanting to help people and also expressing myself. So, of course, you're going to get people who are going to say stuff, because some people have something to say about everything. I have gotten my fair share of some ugly comments. Apparently, I talk with my hands like way too much, because people will be like, "You're distracting me with your hand movements." I'm like, "Okay, like let me just stand here with like my hands behind my back. Like I don't know what to do. I'm Italian. I talk with my hands." But yeah, I have gotten my fair share of comments. I think that you just have to focus on the good ones. I've even gone as far as blocking people who have left hateful comments. I just don't even want that energy around me. So it's just protecting your space as best as you can, and just focusing on the good.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier on like your kind of your healing journey, or you touched on healing. What has that process looked like? For me, I kind of hit a place where I don't want to say I was backed into a corner, because I wasn't, but I got to a place where the pain of staying where I was at became more hurtful, or I just couldn't deal with it than the idea of accepting myself and going through the process of acceptance and self love and all those things. So, what has your healing journey looked like?
Yeah, the pain of staying almost has to outweigh the pain of leaving. And so for me, it was leaving a relationship that I invested 10 years of my life in. I thought I was going to marry him. And so when I left it, it's having the courage to leave, and then kind of like accepting a new reality and a new future, and figuring out what that looks like and what you want it to look like, and then dealing with the grief that comes along with something like a breakup. And so that's it's tough, but it's kind of what sets things in motion in a way that you maybe didn't really even know that you needed. And so I think that's kind of where I was at that time.
Yeah, and I think it's so relatable. Like, I just there's people that just come to my mind immediately. And for you, it was a 10-year relationship. Like, there's so much comfort there. And I'm just curious. Like, I'm not sure if it sounds like you were the one to leave, but in any event, how do you get across to people, or what would you say to people that they're like, I'm in this relationship and it's okay, like it's good, but there's more there. Like, they kind of know deep down that there's something more that they want to do, or that this really doesn't feel right, but the comfort keeps them in something that, they ultimately probably are being better served elsewhere. So I'm just curious, like, what you would say to those people, because I just know so many people that are in relationships that I think they deep down know they shouldn't be in, but just can't. They're kind of stuck.
I think if you feel like you are settling, then you probably are. And if you feel like you deserve better, then you probably do. And so I got to a point where on one hand I didn't like who I was anymore with that person. I didn't like how I was acting, reacting, arguing. I didn't like who I had become in that process. And on the other hand, I would think to myself, I think that somebody else out there could love this person better than I can. So when I kind of came to that realization, I was like, this isn't the best for me or for him. And so when you can really come to a place of knowing that, that's when you can start to make moves towards letting that relationship go. I think being comfortable and settling are two different things. I think that you should be comfortable in the relationship. You should be comfortable enough to be like at that peaceful feeling with your partner, but you shouldn't feel like you're settling. And so if you feel like you are, then you probably are.
Can I challenge, not challenge, but can I replace maybe the word comfortable with
Yeah.
secure? Maybe
Yes, that.
is that, because I think, like, I don't, comfort to me, well, I think there, of course, we need comfort to some extent, but I also always think when it comes to growth we should be, I'm talking to a life coach, but seeking discomfort. But when it comes to a relationship, I think we need to feel secure. Like, I think that
Yes.
is such a foundation. Sorry, I'm actually not a relationship coach. I'm far from it. But
Yeah.
when you were
I
speaking
like
about,
that challenge. I like that word secure. I would also so comfort maybe in your eyes could be synonymous with complacent, like because
yeah.
you don't want to get complacent in your relationship. So comfortability, complacency, security, I like that word.
Yeah, look at this. Look at us guys. So talk to, like, describe Natalie before, kind of, like, during her prior relationship versus Natalie now. Like, how is that process evolved? Like, who do you feel like you were then? Who do you feel like you are now? How do you feel like you were showing up before? How do you feel like you're showing up now? Just kind of talk through that.
I feel like I was in a box, whether it was my partner putting me in a box and me putting myself in a box. I think I was with this person from a very young age. And so I kind of grew up with this person and then grew up to be just whoever I was in that relationship. I didn't really know myself outside of that relationship. And so I kind of put myself in this box, whether it was, like I said, him or me. It was just, I was in a box stuck. I almost didn't even know who I was. And so I
What
kind
does
of
that
was,
mean? Like, what is that, like? Because I relate, but I'm sure our audiences too, and I'd love to hear you just elaborate that. Like, I don't even know
I,
who I really
I feel
was.
like I was being who I thought I was supposed to be. I was being what I thought a good daughter is supposed to be. I thought I was being who a good girlfriend is supposed to be. So I think I was just trying to be who everybody else wanted me to be instead of just being whoever I wanted to be. And I think it's hard to be who you want to be if you don't even know who you are. So I think it took leaving that relationship to really allow myself the time and the freedom to step out of the box and ask myself, who am I really? Who do I actually want to be? What do I want to do with my life? How do I want my future to look? How do I want to show up in the world? And so it kind of was a wake up call in a way to figure out who I am.
And what's I know it's evolving, but what's the answer as of right now in this season? Like, who is Natalie?
I think I just have given myself an opportunity to just be authentically myself. And so, yeah, I'm still figuring that out day by day, but it's it's not putting myself in that in a box of who I think other people need me to be or want me to be. It's just being whoever I want to be. And so that means, not just being a nurse and working the rest of my life in a hospital because that's a secure job and that's my parents, have taught us like get a good job, work for 50 years, retire, blah blah blah, whatever that looks like. I don't want that life. And so I don't want to keep doing the things that would secure that life for myself. I want to kind of branch out and go my own way. So
Yeah, no, I really like that, and I think I've spoken on here before, but I think one of the best compliments you can get is being called unique, because what that's really saying is you don't fit into any boxes. Like you are authentically yourself, and I don't think we're meant to fit in boxes. And I think what you were saying is what I heard is you were trying to fit in this box, like what a good daughter would do, and what society thought would define success. Nurse, get a good job, and I relate so deeply with that. And it's really hard to unlearn that. It almost takes an event like the one you're mentioning to because we get so just caught in going through like the emotions. Like I don't know about you, but I sure felt like for a long time in my life was happening to me,
right.
and I was doing, I would get on paper I was successful, and people would come to me and Matt, you're doing so great, you got a great job. Internally I was miserable, and it almost led to then guilt because it was like, well, everyone's telling me I'm doing great, but internally I don't feel that way. So should I not feel this way? Um, what kind of comes up for you there? Can you relate it all to that?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like I had that same feeling of sleepwalking through life, is what I call
Mm-hmm.
it. When you're just kind of going through the motions and doing what you think that you should do and what society says that you should do or what like success looks like to society, just going along with the status quo instead of challenging it and saying, you know what, maybe this isn't meant for me. Maybe I can have more. Maybe I can have different. And not feeling guilty about it for a long time. I had a lot of guilt surrounding my breakup, surrounding me wanting more, that I've, had to let go of through the years. But, I wouldn't change that for anything because I don't ever want to go back to living my life sleepwalking.
I could never. I could never. I mean, it's really just going from a kind of fixed mindset to a growth mindset, which is, I think about like my life has changed so much over the past year, and when I take a step back, nothing has really changed other than my mindset. And my mindset changing and my perspective changing and the way I view myself changing has just opened up doors that I never believed were even possible. And I think that's why I'm so passionate, and I'm sure you probably relate as it relates to coaching, is because if I can do it, most others can do it. And I've seen what it's like to feel like, to sleepwalk, to use your words, sleepwalk through light. I've also seen what it feels like to feel like you have a vision and a purpose and clarity and a mission and like your fulfillment and all those things. And I just want that for everybody. Like that's capable. And so like how do you talk to your clients when they come to you and say like, Natalie, I just, I feel stuck, or I don't know where to go next, or I'm not happy. Like what do you generally, like how do you kind of work with them through that?
Yeah, I think people need to want it for themselves more than I can want it for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. I think about this when I think about different family members or friends. It's like, yes, I want you to stop sleepwalking through life, but I can't want it more for you than you want it for yourself. So it's the same thing with clients. They have to be willing and wanting to grow and change and have new mindsets and perspective shifts and things. And so my life coaching is very individualized, so it's very client focused. So whatever they come to me wanting to get through or grow through, we kind of just deep dive into it. Um, but it takes homework and you
Mm-hmm.
know doing things and changing your routine and implementing daily habits. So you actually, for things to change, you have to change things. You can't just keep doing the same thing every day and expect things to change.
Nothing changes if nothing changes. I mean, that's like
Right.
it's the most cliche thing, but it's true, and I think that's the power in coaching is it forces action and it shows the importance of action and all that comes with it. Like so, when people go to your Instagram page, like they pull up Natalie Bell, what do you want them? to leave that experience with? Like they scroll through your page, like like what do you want them to feel? How do you want them to feel after they leave your page?
I want them to feel less alone. I want them
That
to
was
feel less
quick.
alone. I want them to feel seen and heard and understood, and like they have a comrade in life and somebody who, yeah, has been through it as well. And, if I can change my life or change my perspective or grow through things or heal through things, then so can you. So, yeah, I just want people to feel less alone.
And I think, my friend, and she told me not to name, I won't go by names, but I'm just thinking about her. And she mentioned that's why she followed you, because she said it was, especially for when she was going through hard times, your content is what she needs, I think is how she described it. Which, I mean, if I was sitting in your shoes right now and someone told me that, I'd be glowing. So I hope you feel recognized, because you should. I mean, that's like one of the best compliments I think that you can ever get. Um, and actually on your content, you said one of the things you said was, someday you'll realize that everything you've gone through that seemingly didn't work out was actually a blessing in disguise. Um, can you just elaborate on that a little bit? What prompted you to kind of come up with that? What was going on?
Yeah, I have this motto that I have lived by since my breakup, my bad breakup like 5 years ago. And it's that everything is working out for us, even when it feels like it's not, especially when it feels like it's not, it is. And so I think if we can really find peace in that motto, then we'll know, and we'll feel like, okay, I had to go through that in order to get to where I am today. I learned things that I otherwise wouldn't have learned, or it's leading me to that closed door is leading me to another open door that I didn't even know that I needed, but that's going to serve me even better. So I know that a lot of times in the moment it can feel so awful and heartbreaking to go through a heartbreak or go through a hard time in life and to be struggling. But if you can find comfort and solace in knowing that you're going through this for a reason, and part of everything working out for us is this not working out, I think it would help people to kind of get through those hard times.
Yeah, and can you point? I mean, I would assume the breakup is one, but maybe like elaborate a little bit more on like how that's shaped, played out in your life, like everything happening for a reason, kind of thing. Which I totally agree with. I think, I mean, some of it is just perspective, but just curious, like if you can point to any tangible examples of where that's played out.
Like, I think if I would have stayed in that relationship, I would have gotten married. I would have probably have kids by now. I would have probably never started life coaching. I probably would have never started sharing content on social media or connecting with people that I have. I wouldn't have started Cleveland Social. So it's like, okay, that had to happen so that all this domino effect could happen. And so, yeah, it sucked at the time, but I would go through it 10 times over to be where I am today. So, and amongst other things, it wasn't just that breakup that has like kind of propelled me. I've been cheated on, I've been ghosted, I've been in other situations where it's been a really low point in my life, but now I realize like it was a blessing that this happened because it's gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah, like how does it feel to think about where you would be otherwise? Like, have you to think the idea of you walking down the aisle next year or next month and having a child. Like I think about what my how my life would have looked like. I got out of a 4 year relationship a couple years ago, um, largely just because it wasn't authentic to myself. And I think about, and actually, you know what, that was one of the driving forces is we were going to sign another lease together, and the thought of it made me just like more anxious than excited. And I'm like, I'm envisioning how my life could look, and I don't, I don't want that. And so um, I think it's such a beautiful perspective that you have around this now. And I saw you were kind of like smiling as like you were saying like, yeah, I would have been married and kids. Like it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, I think I would have been happy. I would have kind of forced myself to be happy, or in a
Can
way
you
had
can you force yourself to be happy? I don't
I think you
know.
could I don't know. I think you can force yourself to see the good in whatever
Yeah.
situation that you're in, maybe. And
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have known this different life that I have now if I would have, been married then. So I wouldn't necessarily even know what I was missing out on, but I would know that I would have that like gripping feeling of there's something else out there for me because that's how I felt at that time. And I think that would bother me the rest of my life. But if I'm married, there's nothing you can really do about it, I think. And so, yeah, I mean, I would have settled and I would have been okay, but it ultimately wouldn't have been as fulfilling as I think my future is.
Yeah, that's my thing. That's what I wrestle with is like, can you really be truly I mean, I think happy's I think what we should be thinking about, which I think you were saying too, is like, can we feel at peace? Can we feel like a sense of ease with, ourselves and our choices? And I don't know if I could ever have been that way, um, if I felt like there was like, if I was settling, like you mentioned the word settling. I don't know. Like I don't know if I could ever be at peace. Of course. Like and I said this to myself. Life would be good. Like life would be okay. Like my life's okay. I have stuff to be grateful for. Like, but I would have been settling quite literally, and like I can't imagine doing that, and that's why I'm so passionate about like trying to help others see that too. And again, like I started this podcast because after I went through some of my journey of self discovery and all this stuff, I was like, everyone go to therapy. It was so good for me. Transform my life. It'll transform yours too. And what I realized is like people were like, like I'm not ready for therapy, and I had to think about myself a couple years ago, like I wasn't ready either. And so what I had to realize is that everyone is in a different season of life, but there's nothing that gives me more fulfillment and like in genuine joy than seeing someone, which I'm sure you can relate to, just like have that like aha moment of like I deserve more.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Not only having that realization, but like taking the steps to then like change their state. And going back to like how you said like you wouldn't be feeling at peace or if you were settling. And I feel like that starts to chip away at us,
Oh yeah.
when we do settle, and it leads to mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and other things that, you don't want. And so and you don't want a life that you're just okay with or you're just like, "Oh, this is fine." Like I want
Hmm.
a really exciting, extraordinary life. I don't want to settle. I don't want to just be okay.
Like you want a life that you're proud of, and the thing is that voice, at least for me, it doesn't get quiet. It doesn't go away. It actually gets louder and louder and louder, and eventually it's like it got again for me. That's what ultimately it's taken me to get to that point to actually
Mhm.
to change. But I'm so glad I did. So you mentioned in your social media also that 2023 had some of the highest highs, I think you said, and lowest lows. Can you touch on? Well, I'll let you pick in terms of where you want to start with the highs or the lows, but please touch on both of those and what those look like.
Yeah, the lowest was being cheated on and being ghosted. Of like the
That's
first
pretty
half of the
low.
year. Yeah, the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, I really started like growing in my social media and my content. I started Cleveland Social. I met some like amazing, beautiful friends that are now like my close knit circle. I met a man who I'm now currently dating and like feeling so good about. So it's definitely been like so high, but also had its lows. So, it just goes to show like everything works out, even when you feel like it's not, it's working out for you.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you, like you had mentioned before, everything kind of happens. Like everything works out for a reason. Everything's working out as it's supposed to. And I was gonna ask you what that reason was, for being, being ghosted, being cheated on. And I think you got to your answer later on, which is like you're now dating somebody that's been better than anything you've had before.
Yeah. And I think, rejection or um, like I guess you could call ghosting kind of like an abandonment thing, but I think that's all. It's all redirection and protection from what's not going to serve you. And so, if that's what had to happen in order for me to meet somebody else, then again, I would go through it again in order to meet who I'm currently with. So, you just have to think of the perspective, have the perspective of that. But of course, like when we're going through it, it's harder to believe that than it is now in hindsight. It's always like, oh, it looks like I could say that now. But when I was going
Hmm.
through it, it was harder for me to believe it. But
Yeah, I mean, and that's when you need to believe it even more, which is really, really hard. Like I remember, like the saying I really like everything that's meant to be will be. Really easy to say when things are going well and things are going as you envision and everything's playing out, and then you get punched in the gut, and then it's like, well, but this wasn't supposed to be like how it is.
yeah.
But that's when you really have to have the mentality and really the faith and the belief and the trust in the universe, whatever it is that you believe in, that this is happening for a greater cause. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened for you. Does dating someone with the following that you do, and I don't know this man, I don't know maybe he's got a big social media account, whatever it is, and it's normal, but is there anything in terms of like you just being in the public eye, if you will, that you've had to talk through? Or is there like a unique dynamic there? There may be
Yeah.
not at all. I'm just spitballing, but it just came up.
It's interesting because I was stuck at like, no, I don't want to say stuck. This is still great, but I was at like 9,000 followers for the longest time up until June of this past year. And so I grew from 9,000 to over 100,000 in a matter of a couple of months. And it just so happened to be like when I had started talking to this new guy.
Hmm.
And so I I was learning as I went how to, deal with a larger following, but also be like respectful of certain boundaries in a relationship. And so I'm still learning and, we still talk through things and, it's just something that I think couples have to figure out. And it's not that I'm wrong, it's not that he's wrong, it's just a figuring out together. Like I don't know how you think about that unless you tell me, or I don't know what you're okay with me sharing and what you're not, and like that's something that we can talk about boundaries together. But it's funny that it kind of happened as that new relationship started to form that I kind of like grew this following. And so I say like I'm still learning too, so we can learn together.
Yeah. Did that lead to any like challenges? I'm sure because everyone wants to. I mean, 9,000 is 8,000 more than I have, so it's still a lot. But point being, like when you just gain popularity overnight, if you will, I think we all want that. All right, it all sounds good. I mean, for me, impacting more people, etc. Did that come with any like unanticipated challenges or things you didn't foresee as you're kind of like as it just kind of happening overnight?
Um, Not necessarily like challenges. I think it's more so just having always a respect as the like having respect as the foundation of the relationship and trust. And so, as long as you have respect and trust for each other, I mean, you know, it's the foundation of everything. So, it's definitely led to like different conversations about like things that I'm feeling, things that he might be feeling. But it's a learning curve. But I think it's something that can lead to growing closer together, but also has a potential of having you grow apart if you don't have the respect and the trust. So that's why those are so big for me.
Hmm.
So anything that I can do to help the trust and help the respect in that relationship, I want to do, because at the end of the day, my partner means more to me than my followers do. I hate to say
Right.
that, but it's prioritizing who you get to
Guys,
prioritize.
close your ears, followers. uh, um, I'm gonna ask a heavy hitting question. You said you're an open book, so you got to answer honestly.
Yeah,
Journey towards self love. Like, if I asked you right now, do you love yourself, Natalie? What is the answer?
yeah, I do 100%. I
Have you
I
all?
think there's
Sorry,
I
go ahead.
think I think there's always room to like grow
Hmm.
in loving
To
yourself
deepen, yeah,
more,
to deepen that
to
love, yeah.
deepen it. But I've come to a place where I really like who I am. I really am proud of the person that I am, and I can look at myself in the mirror and be really proud of how far I've come and what I've had to overcome. And I have a really good intention for sharing the way that I share and connecting with who I connect with. And so I think when you can get really real with yourself, then that's when the self-love starts to come. And also like having the discipline to show up how you want to show up, and being the person that you say that you are. And for me, a big thing is showing up on social media the same as I do in person. So I want to be genuine. I want to be the same in person and on the screen. And so that's something that I have tried to really pride myself in. Um, and it's led to, yeah, me like really loving myself and feeling proud of who I am.
Yeah, I'm pumped up as you were saying that. I'm like, yes, like that. How cool of a feeling is that? Like, I think some people will take it as uh, I don't know, arrogant, but it's so real, like you're proud of the person that you see in the mirror. I mean, how cool is that? Like,
Yeah.
because if you're anything like me, I can't always. That wasn't always the case for myself, and there's our days still when it's harder to love that person that you see in the mirror, and I think that's kind of what you were saying around deepening that love that we have for ourselves. But if you haven't always loved yourself, like how did you what did that process look like to kind of get there or deepen
I
that
think
love?
I think you have to examine who you are and your personality and how you show up in the world. And yeah, it wasn't always like that for me. I couldn't always look in the mirror and feel proud of who I am. I dealt with guilt for a long time. I dealt with certain limiting beliefs, and I dealt with some personality traits that I wasn't super proud of. And so I got to do the work. I had to, read the self-help books and talk to a therapist and listen to the podcasts and get really real with myself and say, like, how could you show up better? How could you change your perspective or your mindset with this? How could you be a better friend? How could you be a better daughter? you know um, I have this exercise I do with my clients a lot, where I ask them, like, write 10 things that you want in a partner, 10 qualities, and then go out and be that list, because you attract who you are. And so, yeah, you just have to be really honest with yourself. So,
And when you say you attract who you are, I could not agree more. How have you seen that play out in your life? I mean, it could be friendships as well. I think about myself, and you hear about the law of attraction, and it sounds kind of woo woo, but then you actually, if you're able to kind of look at yourself honestly, it's like I look back in my past, and I was attracting the type of person I was, which wasn't necessarily the type of person that I want to be around now. And now I've attracted some of the best people that I'm like inspired by every day into my life. And so, how has that like shaped that idea of being the person you want to inspire, attracting who you are? Like, how have you seen that play out in your life?
I've definitely seen it play out in my friendships. I have some of the strongest friendships now than I ever have. They are the best humans I feel like I've ever been around, and they challenge me, they support me, uh, they mirror me in ways. It's so aligned with who I am now and where I'm going. They're in that growth mindset with me, and they look at life very similarly in that growth mindset. And so I've definitely seen it played out there. I've also seen it played out in certain other like relationships with like my brothers, like some of them. Like, I've just developed a better relationship with them. My parents, even, I feel like I've been able to like be more open and honest with them about where I want my life to go, and they've been more supportive, because you know, I'm making these convictions, and I'm proud of them, and I'm excited about them. And so, at one point in my life, I was so worried to disappoint my parents,
Hmm.
because I was stepping outside of nursing. I was wanting something different for my life. I called off a wedding. Like, I was so scared to disappoint my parents for a long time. And I still, like, I still have that mindset a little bit, but I've broken out of it a lot. So, yeah, it's
And
cool to see.
what's it feel like to break out of that? Like, and maybe you did have to disappoint them a little bit, because what I think often happens, especially with loved one, is they ultimately want what's best for us. They just don't know sometimes what is actually best for us. And so, just curious, like, what comes up there.
Yeah, I think my parents always have my happiness as their they want me to be happy, of course.
Hmm.
But their version of what happiness looks like for me might not be my version of what my happiness looks like. And
Hmm.
so it's almost like you have to prove yourself to your parents in a way, and I hate to even like say that you have to prove yourself, but they want you to be happy. So if you can show them that you're happy through doing what you're doing, that's all they want for you. But they see you struggle to get there, and they're like, "Whoa, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you should have stayed in nursing." And because starting a business is hard, and building up your social media can be challenging, so they see you through those phases, and they're like, trying to protect you from failure, from insert XYZ. But ultimately, yeah, I think in our minds too, I think I put that on my parents more than they did. Like I was so scared, and my mom was like, "Why would we ever be disappointed in you? We just want you to be happy." So it was something that I had to let go of. It wasn't even necessarily something my parents were doing or saying. It was just me, and that's something I had to really learn.
Yeah, yeah. What
Really.
are you? I mean, you've got quite the journey. Um, what are you most proud of?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would say my courage to walk away from a situation that I easily could have stayed in.
Yeah, I'm pumped up. Yeah, talk more about that. That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
that's so. Yeah, it takes so much courage.
yeah, I think it took a lot for me to do that. It was the hardest decision of my life, but it was also the best.
And that's the thing is normally the hardest decisions are ultimately the ones we look back on and are most proud of. For me it was my sexuality and coming out, and I look back at that, and it was I hope I really do hope that I never have to deal with anything as painful as that as doing that, as that process. But the flip side is it really did, like, there was a point in my life where it was like I didn't like this part of myself. Then there was a point where it was like, okay, I've accepted it, that it's true, but I'm still not proud of it. Then it's like, okay, now I'm kind of like, I'm proud, I'm comfortable. And there's a point where like I wouldn't change it, because to your point, like, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't have all the experiences and the, call it wisdom, whatever you want to call it, that I've gained through going through this most challenging time. And I mean, I've walked away from uh, a 3.5, 4 year relationship. I can't imagine almost 3 times as long as that. Like, I mean, you're walking away from a whole life, really,
Right.
because you're talking about families of the other person, friends, dogs, animals. I mean, I just, that takes so much strength.
Yeah, it was difficult, and when you care and love somebody, it's hard. You don't want to hurt them, but like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I knew that there's somebody else out there that could love him better than I can.
Yeah,
So,
and
being-
ultimately, like, I don't say you're hurting them by staying, but that's kind of the mentality I had, is like, I owe it to this person. Like, my heart's not in it,
right.
and I owe it to them, because there will be somebody that is all in, and I'm not. And when I
Right.
framed it that way to myself, it made it a little bit more. I mean, it was brutal, but it made it a little bit more like easy to actually muster up the courage.
Yeah. Yeah, and there wasn't anything uh like horribly wrong that happened.
Hmm.
Like there wasn't this big event that happened that I like could blame the breakup on. It was just that it didn't feel right for me to say yes and walk down an aisle to somebody that I wasn't 100% sure about. And so when you have to like peel yourself away from that person, I mean, it was really hard because I still really cared about him, and still do to this day, but obviously in a different way. But yeah, it's hard when there's still so much love there. But ultimately, you have to do what's best for you, and whatever's best for you is also best for your partner. So if I didn't want to be in that relationship, then that's not good for him either.
Yeah, and it's almost harder for both people when there's like when you can't pinpoint it to something specifically. Because I think when you're, especially when you're broken up with, you want to be, oh, well, at least in my experience, like, oh, it's because of this thing. Well, I'll change this, or oh, it's because of this moment. It's like, no, we're just different people going different paths, and that makes it that much harder to like, I think the closure piece, if you will. You also had a piece on social media, which I really like, and I think it's kind of applicable to this. But you said letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means prioritizing you and your peace and not giving up on yourself. I love it. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think you're not necessarily giving up. You're giving yourself an opportunity to have something different and to get back to yourself and your joy and figure out like where you want to go in your life aside from that person. And so, it takes letting go, but that doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're giving into something else.
Yeah, no, I mean that's it's very wise. You mentioned like you have friends that support you in terms of like where you want to go next. Where are you headed? Where is Natalie going? What's next for her? What else is going on?
My goal is to quit nursing. I like don't even want to say that out loud. It sounds so crazy, but yeah,
Yes.
I don't want to work for somebody else anymore. Um, I love nursing and I love the opportunities that it's given me to connect with people. But yeah, I would really like to take Cleveland Social and branch it and
Bring it to
expand it.
Chicago.
Yes, Chicago Social. Let's do it, Matt.
Bring it on down here.
So, yeah, I could see that really going far and just continue to create content and connect with more people. So I don't know. It's exciting, but the unknown is scary. But you build I always say you build confidence in yourself by feeling the fear and doing it anyways. And so, whether you can apply that to a lot of things in life, but for me, it's been like taking that next step of how can I get out of nursing? What avenue can I take? How can I, add different things in my life to make more income or supplement? And so it's feeling that fear and doing it anyways. That's how you build the confidence muscle.
Yeah, and
So
it's like
more of that.
sorry, yeah, sorry to cut you out. The challenges never go away. It's
Right.
like with the growth mindset. I think the challenge in what you're saying is like, I've done all these crazy things, but now like the you have something totally new, and the good thing is that you've been equipped through all your experiences. But like leaving nursing, very very applicable to me. I probably shouldn't, actually, we'll talk a little bit offline. I'm not sure where I'll be when this is released. But point being, it's a new challenge that requires a new set of mental muscles and requires a new set of planning and execution. And I'm super excited for you. Like, you got this. Bring it to Chicago. Nursing, you've helped, I'm sure, thousands and thousands of people. But now it's time to prioritize Natalie and focus on what's next.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited. I'm excited, nervous, anxious, all of the above. But yeah.
Um, Last question here before I move over to our rapid fire questions at the end. I don't ask this to everybody, but I'm gonna ask it to you. How do you want to be remembered?
It kind of goes back to what I said earlier about how I want my social media to feel. I just want to be remembered as somebody who like allowed people to not feel alone and just to be like a warm voice and uh, somebody who speaks life into people, somebody who's there for you, just makes you feel less alone. I just really, I think a big part of why I'm here is just to connect with people and to share what I learn through what I've been through and help other people. I've heard this quote that I love. You've probably heard it as well, but like you healing out loud helps somebody not suffer in silence. And so if I
Ooh,
could,
I haven't, but I love it.
yeah, and so I always think about that. Like because a lot of people just scroll on social media and they're not creators. And so if I
Hmm.
can create content out loud, heal out loud, that allows the people who are watching my content not suffer in silence, then I mean, that's such a big purpose for me. And
Yeah, no,
so
I
we
I
connect to
thought you were
that.
sorry. Go ahead. So go ahead, finish. I'm sorry. I got too
No,
excited.
that's it.
I was gonna say I thought you were gonna say the quote, which I'm not sure if you've heard. It's like, the purpose of life is to find your wait. The meaning of life is to find your purpose. The purpose of life is to give it away. Maybe it's flipped, but something like that. And I thought you were gonna go there. I have not heard the healing one. That is great. That is super good, and it dovetails so nicely into our rapid fire before we wrap up here.
Cool.
Um, which is the first question is, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given, or a favorite quote?
Ooh, there's so many good quotes out there. I mean, I'm gonna stick with my motto is just that everything is working out even when it feels like it's not. That's my favorite, just because I found so much peace in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Second one, if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I'm gonna be sentimental and say my dad's parents. I never met my grandpa, and then my grandma died when I was like 3. So I would love to just get to know them. I feel like it would help me understand me more and my dad more, and so yeah, I would say them. It's kind of cheesy, but
No, that's a nice answer. We've gotten that before. It's not the first time. We got Benjamin Franklin the other day. That was the first time I've
oh,
gotten that one.
interesting. Oh.
Yeah, right. Um, and the last question is just like, what do you love to do in your free time? What are your hobbies?
I love to take care of myself, like mentally, physically, emotionally. So filling my own cup up, what that looks like is I love to work out, any kind of movement. I love to run. I love to lift. I love to lay out at the pool. I have a rooftop pool at my apartment. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I love being in the sun. Love going out with friends, spending time with family, reading. I love to read. So yeah, it's just like basic stuff, but stuff that fills my cup.
Give us a good book.
Ooh, some of my favorite that I recommend them to my clients too is The Five Love Languages.
Okay.
Attached is the attachment style book, and then You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Oh, I haven't read any of those. All right, I've got some homework to
That's
do.
your list.
Yeah, I'm gonna add them to my list. All right, Natalie, thank you so much for coming on,
Thank
for
you.
sharing your wisdom, for sharing your story, for being open, authentic, transparent. You know the drill, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.